ourselves a disservice if we relegate our understanding of miscarriage to reproductive and biological precepts. For the primary definition and the primary meaning of the word miscarriage is not the premature expulsion of a fetus from the uterus, not capable of living under normal circumstances. That's not the primary meaning of the word. The primary meaning of the word miscarriage is mismanagement. The primary meaning of the word miscarriage, it is to commit failure, or one who fails, one who handles incorrectly or inappropriately. And so when this text has been tagged, a man who had a miscarriage, please don't get me wrong. I'm not by any means trying to suggest that men should or could or would or should give any thought to having children. I just want to make sure I clarify that clearly. That's not what I mean. I'm looking at it from the primary meaning of that word, which means to fail, to mismanage, to handle inappropriately. Let me also say that Jesus did not come for us to be failures. He did not come for us to be mismanagers. He did not come for us to handle inappropriately. He spoke in a very charismatic way and with a very clarion call. I have come that you might have life, and that you might have life and you might have it more abundantly. But in spite of the charismatic endeavors of our Christ, and in spite of that clarion call, too many of us have handled inappropriately. Too many of us have mismanaged. Too many of us have failed in terms of spiritual matters and ascertaining the purposes of God in our lives. And in our text, I want to suggest that there is a man who's a perfect picture, in my opinion, of mismanagement. In our text, there's a man who's a paradigm, a perfect photograph of someone who handled an opportunity inappropriately. This man, his name was Nicodemus. Nicodemus mismanaged. He handled inappropriately. In my opinion, he failed with the opportunities that had been granted to him by Jehovah. John, as he writes in the Gospel of John, to present to us the deity or the divinity of Jesus Christ, as authenticated by 7 signs or 7 miracles, he presents this very tender interaction with Jesus, with this individual whose name was Nicodemus. John gives us a little bit of the sociology of Nicodemus. He says that he was a man of the Pharisees. The Pharisees was this sect that had arisen in the early 2nd century BC to protest the fact that the military leaders had been nominated as the high priest. Because of this secularization of the sacred high priest office, this group arose in strict demonstration and protest to what they felt was the devaluing of the sacred high priest office 2 centuries before the birth of Jesus. They were called Pharisees. They believed in this adherence to the law, to the Mishnah, to the Pentateuch, and to the Torah. And they stood even during the times of Christ to lead people back to this legalistic milieu and to lead them away from this dispensation called grace. Nicodemus was a part of that particular party. Not only was he a Pharisee, John also tells us he was a ruler of the Jews. Some have suggested that Nicodemus was perhaps a part of the Sanhedrin council there in Jerusalem. He was a big timer. Nicodemus, if you will, was a baller and a shot caller in the land in the 1st century. He was a bigwig. He was a major individual. If you will, he was the HPIC, the head Pharisee in charge.
This message is important because it's geared to church leaders, to pastors and people who are really involved in the work of ministry. You know, every church has three categories. A church has the core, it has the crowd, and it has the curious. The core, those are the people who really undergird the missions of the church, that 25% who are responsible for most of the resources and most of the ministry. And so sometimes when we look at ministry, the people who are involved are unsung heroes.
Nothing went on in the land without Nicodemus's involvement and Nicodemus's interaction. But yet, Nicodemus, who is filled with prestige, popularity, productivity, and prosperity, in my opinion, in spite of all of the attainment and the accolades and the affluence that he perhaps enjoyed in the first century, he had prestige, he had popularity, he had prosperity. But in my opinion, Nicodemus had no peace. I want you to know that it is possible to have all of the earthly trappings and all of the accoutrements of sociological attainment. You could have climbed to the higher rung of the socioeconomic ladder, have degrees, have cars, cash, cribs, clothes, and creature comforts, but yet still in the stillness of the evening, when you're by yourself, nobody really knows the struggles and the challenges that you're facing. You can have everything that the world looks like it's successful and peace, but in your innermost being, something is missing, something is lacking. And Nicodemus was in that particular posture. He had everything that somebody could want, yet he has no peace, and he is pregnant with desire. He is filled with a passion to get to know this field preacher from Galilee. And so what does he do? What does he do? What does he do? He ends up, although he's desirous of the next level, he's desirous of going from glory to glory and faith to faith, he's desirous of getting that which has seemingly evaded him. He ends up mismanaging a very important moment. Let me tell you why he mismanages an important moment. Nicodemus is one of the few individuals in the Holy Writ, particularly the Gospels, the Synoptics and John. He is one of the only individuals who has a one-on-one interaction with the Kyrios Christos. Nicodemus was able to meet Jesus by himself. I'm not talking about with the 5,000 men, not counting the women and children in that desert place near Bethsaida. I'm not talking about as he's walking through the streets of Jericho and a man by the name of Zacchaeus, because of the throng, could not get to him and ran ahead of the crowd and climbed up into that sycamore tree because he wanted to see Jesus. I'm not talking about the day when he was going to heal Jairus' daughter, and a woman who the historian Josephus calls Veronica had an issue of blood and couldn't get to him, but got down on her hands and knees and said, if I just could reach out and touch the hem of his garment, I could be made whole. I'm not talking about in Matthew chapter 5 when he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, he saw the multitudes and began teaching, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. I'm not talking about when he borrowed a coat from Bethpage and made his triumphal entrance into Jerusalem, and they strolled and strewn palm leaves in the way and cried, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. I'm not talking about even when he was in the bottom of a boat on the Sea of Gadara with his disciples, and he was in the sleep in the hinder part of a ship. I mean, Nicodemus has the undeniable privilege to meet Jesus one-on-one, because he was looking for something that he could not acquire from his Pharisaic privilege. And I want you to know, you can have money, you can have steaks and lobster, you can have a black card and carte blanche and American Express, you can travel the world, go to the Caribbean, you can go to Paris and shop, but I'm here to tell you, you get to a point in life when money and when fame and when fortune and when your pursuits and when your degrees can't. I wish I had somebody who knew that there are a lot of folk who make 6 digits multiple times, but they are miserable. Nicodemus has a longing, has a passion for something that he could not get from the Torah, and he gets an opportunity to meet Jesus by himself. But he has a miscarriage. He mismanages that moment because although he is pregnant with opportunity and pregnant with desire, he fails. He handles inappropriately that divine encounter that he had with Jesus.
Don't you turn that channel. I'll be right back. You're watching Living Hope.
You are the Father. Nicodemus didn't know who was responsible for making him have his desire, and so he relegates Jesus to a master teacher, a didaskalos, and an anthropos, which lets us know he really didn't know who he was talking to.
Every time someone invests, every time someone's a partner with us, they help us to reach other boys and girls, to reclaim them from child sex trafficking. Whenever someone invests in us, they help us to touch the young boy, young girl who has HIV. They help us to minister to the woman who's been battered, or the child who's been battered that has nowhere to go. So they help us to go out and make a difference in the world.
Partnering with Dewey Smith Ministries connects you to a growing global outreach, touching the lives of the battered, imprisoned, sexually abused, and needy.
But by partnering with us, you really become partakers and not just part of the responsibility, but also the blessing. So we're just excited to have persons who want to make a difference for Christ. We're excited about people and transform the world.
Impact the world with your partnership with EDS Ministries. Your monthly donation of $25 or more helps to impact the lives of thousands. Join Carpenters at Work. Become a partner with Dewey Smith Ministries today.
Because of wonderful people like you, people around the world are hearing the word of God.
Why does Nicodemus come to Jesus by night? Well, Nicodemus comes to Jesus by night because he felt that if he had been associated with Jesus in the daytime, his fellow Pharisee and perhaps his Sanhedrin brothers would question his commitment to the Mishnah. They believed that he had gotten caught up in this idolatrous and pagan movement that would eventually be called the Way. And so Nicodemus, instead of coming in the day when that encounter would have been visible, he puts on his shades, puts on his cap, pulls up his collar, looks north, south, east, west to ensure that nobody sees him. Because you know, when I was a boy, they used to sing a song called "The Freaks Come Out at Night." Nicodemus comes in the nighttime simply because he did not want to be viewed publicly with Jesus. He was ashamed that he had a desire to get to know him, and so he tries to conceal that desire. You know, it's similar to a lot of young girls who get pregnant and they're expecting a child, and we had a couple here in the church who, because of their physique and because of their immaturity, did not want to tell their parents, did not want to tell their pastor, and so what do? They conceal it for 9 months by covering up themselves, by wearing larger shirts. A couple of years ago, one of our teenagers, 9 months pregnant, went into the bathroom and had the baby in the bathroom, and her mother never knew she was expecting a child. Why? Because so many people are ashamed that something is inside, that they don't want that to be concealed outwardly. Such is the case with Nicodemus. Inside, he has a curiosity and a desire to know Jesus. He has a desire to be affiliated with Jesus, but yet he does not want anybody else around him to know that, so he comes to Jesus by night. And let me tell you something, when you have a desire and a curiosity, and when you want an encounter with Jesus, and yet you are afraid of how people will view you because of your desire to connect with Jesus, you're on your way to being a failure. You're on your way to being a mismanager. You'd be surprised how many of us go to work on Mondays and at lunchtime, at the lunch counter, refuse to say our grace because we don't want people to know that we're people of faith. You'll be surprised how many people come to worship every week and fight back tears and fight back the lifting of their hands because they don't want somebody who's sitting beside them or somebody who came to worship with them to feel them as being over emotional and sensational. And so they suppress worship to God, trying to be who they are not because they want people's opinion of them to not be tarnished by their opinions and by their perspectives and by their desires to worship God in spirit and in truth. But I'm here to tell you, when you allow people and the expectations and the opinions of other folk about your relationship to God to make you harness and conceal how you feel about him, you're on your way to being a mismanager. You're on your way to mishandling an opportunity. You're on your way to being a failure. I'm so glad that after getting saved, the greatest deliverance God ever gave me was being delivered from the views and the opinions of other people. Because when I come to church, no longer do I try to fight back my tears because folk will think I'm soft. Let folk think what they want to think. You think I'm soft if you want to run up on me the wrong way. You'll see how soft I am. My tears have nothing to do with being soft. The lifting of my hands does not mean I'm docile or passive. And so I've learned that I can be a man and still say, I love you, Jesus. I can love God and still be a strong African-American, scholastic, saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost-filled man and still express my worship to God. I can love LeBron and the Lord. I can go watch the Falcons and have faith. I can lift up the Cowboys and Christ at the same time, because it does not make me less than of a man than what other people see about me. And I'm so glad that I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth. Why don't you look at a neighbor and say, I'm not ashamed to get my praise on. I'm not ashamed to lift my hands. I'm not ashamed to do my dance. And if you got a problem with somebody who's demonstrative in worship, if you got a problem with somebody who has a celebratory spirit in worship, then do yourself a favor. Go get you another seat, because I came in here to act crazy. I came in here to be a fool for Jesus. Matter of fact, when you come next Sunday, before you sit on your roll, just look at your roll and say, ah. And if nobody eyes back, go get you another seat, because you want to sit beside somebody who got something to praise God. Can somebody say, I'm not ashamed to bless his name. I'm not ashamed to give him glory.
The pastor or those in leadership, those who have titles and positions, they may get the accolades, they may get the respect, they may have their names called, but there are some unsung heroes who work in ministry who are just as valuable to the kingdom as those who are up front.
Where did this passion come from? Where did this desire to know Jesus come from? Who put it inside of him? He assumes wrongly about it, and I know that based on his words in verse number 2. He goes to Jesus by night. And listen what he says. He says, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God. For no man can do these miracles that thou doest, except God be with him. Upon first observation of verse 2, it seems to be a verse filled with nobility. Upon first observation of verse number 2, it seems to be a verse that is filled with respectability. But when you do some linguistic analysis and some etymological studies and exegesis on this passage, you will discover that Nicodemus spoke well, but he cognitively had discerned wrong. Because he goes to Jesus, and look what he says to Jesus. He calls Jesus 3 different things. Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles except God be with him. He says, Rabbi, teacher, man. So he says, I'm pregnant with a desire to want to know who you are. Something in me is missing. So let me go and talk to the rabbinos, the didaskalos, and the anthropos. Rabbinos, teacher. Rabbinos, rabbi, teacher. Didaskalos, teacher. Rabbi, chief teacher. Anthropos, man. Rabboni, rabbinos, didaskalos, anthropos. He's pregnant with the desire to know Jesus, but he relegates him merely to rabbinos, didaskalos, and an anthropos. Rabbi, teacher, man. It's something special about you, but you are a rabbinos, a rabboni, a didaskalos, and anthropos. He is in the presence of the one who John talked about when he said, unlike Matthew, who takes Jesus back to Abraham and brings him through 42 burning generations, Matthew shows the Jewish connection and the Jewish genealogy of Jesus. Mark picks him up, skips by the birth narrative, and shows him as a grown man. Luke takes him back and shows his universality and shows how he's connected to the Gentiles and begins with the birth of Jesus, with his connection through Zechariah and through Elizabeth, to show that affinity between Elizabeth and Mary. He starts at the birth narrative. But John is not a synoptic writer. Takes us beyond Matthew. Takes us beyond Abraham. Takes us beyond John the Baptist as a voice crying out in the wilderness. Takes us beyond Elizabeth. He says, let me cut through the chase. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. All things were made by him, and without him was anything made that was made. In him there was life. And he said in verse number 14, and the Word and the Logos became sarx and dwelt among us, full of aletheia, full of charis and aletheia, full of grace and truth. He says he's deeper than Abraham. He goes beyond John the Baptist, Elizabeth, and Zacharias. He goes way back to the beginning. So John here deals with the deity or the divinity of Jesus Christ as affirmed through 7 miracles or 7 signs. That is the whole purpose of the Gospel of St. John, to show the deity of Jesus through 7 miracles. But here Nicodemus cracks into the scenes and fragments Johannine protocol. For he says he's not the Logos, but he's a rabbinos. He's a didaskalos. He's an anthropos. In other words, like many who perhaps have been engaged in multiple relationships and now they got to go on Maury Povich to find out, you are the Father. Nicodemus didn't know who was responsible for making him have his desire, and so he relegates Jesus to a master teacher, a didaskalos, and an anthropos, which lets us know he really didn't know who he was talking to. See, he calls him Rabboni, didaskalos, if you will, anthropos, when he should have been calling him Theos, Christos, Pneumatos. Okay, y'all, I used to be slow too. He calls him Rabbanos, Didaskalos, Anthropos, but he should have called him Theos, Christos, Pneumatos. He calls him great teacher, good teacher, man, but he should have been called him Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
My friends, I want you to know that your joys and your pains are working for God's glory and for your good. Help me to spread the message of hope and love across the world. I need some partners. Why don't you consider partnership with us right now? The number's on the screen. Pick up the phone right now. Don't hesitate. Don't procrastinate. I need your help to spread the good news of Jesus Christ all over the world. Remember, weeping does endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. I'm out of time now. I'll see you next time, but always remember this. If you be good to God, then God will be good to you. You've been watching Living Hope. Peace. See you next time.
Be transformed by Dr. Dewey's message, The Man Who Had a Miscarriage.
When you allow people and the expectations and the opinions of other folk about your relationship to God to make you harness and conceal how you feel about him, you're on your way to being a mismanager. You're on your way to mishandling an opportunity. You're on your way to being a failure. I'm so glad that after getting saved, the greatest deliverance God ever gave me was being delivered from the views and the opinions of other people.
Order your own copy of this message today on CD or DVD when you visit our website or call 877-894-HOPE. Download the new e.dewey Smith Ministries app today in the iTunes Store or Google Play. Connect with us wherever you go on your phone, iPod Touch, or iPad. We have lots of great content to empower you. You can stream live and connect with us all within the app. Download today. Meet Dr. E. Dewey Smith in any of these great locations. February 21st at Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Covington, Georgia. Tuesday, March 1st at the First Corinthian Baptist Church in New York, New York. Friday, March 4th at Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey. For more information on any of these great events, call 877-894-HOPE. Next time on Living Hope.
When you've had an affinity with divinity, a hookup with the holy, interaction with the infinite, there ought to be something about how you walk, about how you talk, about how you look. When they asked the question in John chapter 7, have any of our rulers believed on him? Nicodemus, if he had really met him, he should have been the first one to stand up. But all I'm saying is, his name is in the book 3 times. And never does he say, I believe. Go to Acts chapter 8, the Ethiopian eunuch said, I believe. Acts chapter 16, the jailers who threw in Paul and Silas, after they had beaten them and their whole house got saved. And they never met Jesus one-on-one. How do you meet Jesus one-on-one personally? And we got to guess or wonder about whether you really know him.